Good evening, Rabbi. Chodesh Tov. We want to talk tonight about the issue of food which was cooked by non-Jews. You may well know that a person who goes to a restaurant, let's say, some people think that this is allowed to do. They think that you can go to a restaurant which is owned by non-Jews and you can order over there some things which are known to be kosher in terms of their ingredients. There's nothing non-kosher in the ingredients there. For instance, to eat some kind of a salad, or to eat some kind of a fish dish, or some kind of French fries, or things like this. All kinds of dishes which don't contain any meat or any products which are not kosher. They're known to be kosher. Nevertheless, even if you do know that these products are kosher that are involved, it's still forbidden because of the issue of the cooking of the non-Jew. What does that mean? That the rabbis, the Chachamim, Chazal, said, they decreed that the Jews are not allowed to eat cooked food which is cooked by non-Jews. We'll define what that means, but just to give you the reason, first of all, the reason is because of chatanut. The ikar, the main reason is because of chatanut. What does it mean, chatanut? That a person may come to marry a non-Jew because of this. How does that work? That a person who goes and eats with the non-Jews, he eats their foods, so the non-Jew will invite him to his house, and there he may meet his daughter, right, and see, oh, she looks nice, whatever, meet her, and then wind up marrying her like that. When the families are together, eating together and hanging around together in a festive setting like that, so what happens is it just brings them closer in terms of friendship, in terms of camaraderie, and this could cause a person to intermarry, God forbid. So therefore the rabbis kept us away from eating the food which was cooked by non-Jews. This is the reason why. There's also another reason brought down. This is like a minority opinion, which says that it may also be forbidden because of the issue of they can put something non-kosher, some non-kosher ingredients in there, which we're not aware of. There are sometimes that people that slip in all kinds of non-kosher things, ingredients in there, and you may think, oh, this is kosher, but the truth is that he slipped in something there which is not kosher, and it's not really readily visible to you. You can't see the ingredient already; it's already mashed up or whatever. It's not identifiable. It's not identifiable, so therefore you may think that it's kosher. But the main reason, as we said, Rabotai, according to most of the poskim, they agree that the main reason is because of chatanut. So therefore, even if you know that all the ingredients are kosher, nevertheless, a person is not allowed to eat something which is cooked by a non-Jew. But this has all kinds of conditions and all kinds of details that we need to discuss. That's what we're here for tonight. So let's get started. First of all, the Shulchan Aruch teaches us in Siman Kuf Yud Bet Yorodea, it says that a person is not allowed to eat bread which was cooked by non-Jews, and as we said, the reason we already discussed why that is. But what happens is now it tells you, Shulchan Aruch, first of all, something important to know, that we're only talking about bread which is made out of the 5 species, which is wheat and barley and rye and spelt and oats. Those 5 species are forbidden. When it comes to bread which is made from other species, let's say it's made from rice or made from corn or all kinds of other things, this bread is not a part of this prohibition. So therefore it's allowed to have this kind of bread which was made by non-Jews. The only bread which is not allowed, as we said, is made out of the 5 species. So the truth is that sometimes what happens is, you have many times that the bread is a mixture of several species. They put in like multi-grain, some kind of thing. So the question is, what about then? It has also some rice in there, it has some corn, it has some wheat, it has some barley, it has all kinds of things, it has some oats. So what do you do in a case like that? So we go according to the majority. If the majority is made out of the 5 species, so then it will be forbidden. But if the majority is made out of the other species, which are not from those 5, rice, corn, other things like this, all kinds of kitniot, all kinds of legumes, so there what we will say is that it's allowed, because we go according to the majority in these kinds of things. That's the way it works all the time. Very good. So let's go on a little bit and see what else we have here. So it tells us the Shulchan Aruch like this. Yesh mekomot shemekirin bedavar. So it tells you that there are places which are lenient regarding this. What does that mean? That the truth is that what happened was that when this decree was made by the sages originally, the Jews in many places were not able to keep this decree because they had only non-Jewish bakeries over there, and they didn't have Jewish bakeries. And bread is considered to be like a staple of life, and a person cannot really subsist without bread. He also needs it very much for the seudot, for the meals of the holidays, the festive holidays and Shabbat. He needs them for those things as well. So therefore, it's very hard to get along without bread. It's also something which keeps a person satiated and strong and healthy. So therefore, a person needs bread. People need bread. So therefore, what they did was they canceled this decree. They kind of like nullified it. It's considered to be a decree that they were not able to keep. The tzibur was not, the community was not able to keep it. So therefore, there many places started to be lenient regarding this and to eat bread which was made by non-Jews, even after the decree was made. So the truth is, we have to discuss what is the situation today. The situation varies from place to place, but the Ashkenazim, as we're going to see later on in the Ramah, he brings down the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah, the Ashkenazim do eat now non-Jewish bread baked by non-Jews, even in a case where there is Jewish bread available. Nevertheless, they do take the liberty to buy bread made by non-Jews, and this is their custom in most places that we know of. So therefore, they have no problems with this, and that's why you go to the store. You find over here in the stores all kinds of bread products that are made by non-Jews, but nevertheless, since the Ashkenazim the custom is to be lenient regarding this, so therefore they do eat them. All kinds of pitot, all kinds of bread products, all kinds of cakes as well, all kinds of things like this, which are made by non-Jews. Nevertheless, they do allow them to eat it, and they also give a hechsher. They also give a certification of kashrut. They do give on these things, even though they're made by non-Jews. Why is that? Because their custom is that when it comes to bread, and also cake is considered to be like, in this case, in this discussion, it's considered to be like bread as well. So therefore, we call it, because we call it pat. In Hebrew, we call that pat. This is some kind of form of bread as well, even though it's not the bread that we use for meals. It comes for dessert and snacks, but nevertheless it's called pat. So therefore, all these things nowadays we are somewhat lenient on them. When it comes to the Sfaradim, they're a little bit more medakdek. They're a little bit more stringent. What does that mean? That the custom of the Sfaradim is that they will not eat the bread made by the non-Jew unless there is no bread made by Jews. But if there is a bakery with Jews over there that make bread, so then the Sfaradim, what they do is they do not eat the bread which is made by non-Jews. So it's a matter of availability, and it's a matter of convenience. Sometimes you cannot find it, whatever. So you have to. Then we do allow to have the bread of non-Jews. But otherwise, if you have the same bakery here and there, one bakery with a non-Jew and one bakery with a Jew, so there the Sfaradim are usually more stringent to buy from the Jew only, unless there are also other circumstances. We're going to discuss also other things which also are involved with this, and they do influence the halakha. They do sometimes can overturn the halakha a little bit in some cases. That's the idea of the time. So let's go on a little bit and discuss this further. So it tells you that also it has to do with one other issue, which is that even though, as we said, the custom is in most places now to be lenient regarding this, that we do allow to have non-Jewish bread in some cases or all cases, nevertheless, we're only talking about bread which is made by a baker, right? Bakery bread, not made by somebody in his house, homemade bread for his own consumption, personal, private consumption. Because there, we're not allowed to have those things, even if the situation warrants, in some cases, as we said, that we should have non-Jewish bread. Nevertheless, in a case like this, where it's made by a homeowner, somebody who just makes home-baked bread, so there, we're not allowed to have it. Why is that? Why is it more severe than a bakery? Because in a bakery, the concept of chatanut, the concept of intermarriage, doesn't really apply there, because we're talking about a business, so him inviting you over to his house to have some kind of a meal together, it's not really pertinent, it's not really relevant over here, because this is a business. You're not going there for personal reasons, you're going there just to buy some products. So therefore, when it comes to the issue of private bread made by a balabait, made by a homemaker at home, home-baked bread, so there's really an issue of chatanut, intermarriage. What does that mean? That if you go there to eat his bread, he'll invite you over, you'll sit down, the families get together, and this leads to intermarriage, God forbid. So therefore, in the case of the home-baked bread, there we're much more stringent about this. But the truth is that we do find in the Shulchan Aruch also here, there is one opinion that says that what? That if a person doesn't have bread altogether, there is no bakery either. There's no bakery made bread made by non-Jews, and there's also no Jewish bakery as well. So there, it says the Shulchan Aruch, there are some opinions who do allow you to buy even homemade bread in a case like this. What does that mean? That we have no choice. You need bread to for Shabbat, for Yom Tov, for all kinds of Seudot Mitzvah. So there, we do allow even to have home baked bread, because there's no choice. Otherwise, we're going to have to eat Shabbat and the holidays without bread, which is also considered to be very, very poor, right? A very poor performance, very poor performance of the mitzvot. So therefore, a person in a case like this, there is definitely what to rely on. If a person has only home baked bread of a goy, and he has no other bread to do Shabbat, to do Yom Tov, to do festivals, so here in a case like that, he's allowed to do even take a bread like that when there's no choice. But otherwise, if there is a choice, he should not opt for that, because it's considered to be the worst of all the choices, as we said over time. Very good. Let's go on. So he tells you another thing here, the Shulchan Aruch, very important point, as we mentioned already regarding the cakes, that if a person is having some kind of bread which has also some flavors in there, like betzim, like eggs, egg yolks they put in there, they knead it with eggs, that makes it a different texture, gives it a more different flavor as well, gives it some taste as well, or also some other things like honey and sugar, they make it sweet, like a sweet challah. So nevertheless, even though they put all these kinds of things in there, and these kinds of things are not really bread, they're like just food products, but nevertheless, we do consider that to be bread for these purposes. So therefore, a person is allowed to have those as well, even though they're made by non-Jews, in a case where, as we said, you're allowed to have bread baked by non-Jews. Very good. So now it tells you, Shulchan Aruch, also another thing, which is that even though we have a prohibition regarding bread baked by non-Jews, but let's say if a person wants to make a solution for this, what's the solution? Very simple. All he has to do is that if he goes to that bakery where the bread is baked, even though it's baked by non-Jews, and he does something over there to help with the baking. What does that mean? Either he lights the oven, he lights the fire over there, or he turns it up after it's already lit. He turns it up more a little bit. He adds a little bit more flame there. He stirs up the flame a little bit more. He does even something a little bit like that, something symbolic more or less. It's not really so helpful, but nevertheless, since for the purposes of the bread, the whole point is to teach you that we shouldn't have bread made by non-Jews. So therefore, in a case like this, even some kind of a tikkun, some kind of a thing that a person does to change the flame and to make it bigger or to enlarge it, even though it's very symbolic only, nevertheless, we do allow, in a case like that we should eat that bread. It's considered to be already kosher, for sure, 100%, no questions. Why is that? Because the rabbis didn't really require much over here to make this kind of bread kosher. They didn't require such a big tikkun, such a big rectification. They just required something even symbolic somewhat, right? It has to be something real, but not really so significant, right? So that's the idea. So therefore, any situation like this, where the bread is made by non-Jews, but the Jew has some kind of involvement there, as we said, with the baking process, as we mentioned, these kinds of things. So there, for sure, it's allowed. There's no question regarding that, Rabbi. So that's a good thing to know. But if it's made totally by non-Jews and it's owned by non-Jews, so there, as we said, right, according to the conditions that we just mentioned, it's going to be like that we're going to have, depending on the situation of the availability and what your custom is and so forth and so on, as we mentioned. Okay, very good. Another interesting thing that points out the Shulchan Aruch, something very interesting. There are certain dishes, cooked dishes and so forth and so on, they have bread in them. They have breadcrumbs in them, or all kinds of things like this, or croutons made out of bread. So the question is like this, right? If you have a mixture of bread and also other things inside that product, is that also forbidden because of the prohibition of non-Jewish bread? So there tells us the Shulchan Aruch that it goes according to the majority. What does that mean? If the majority of that product is not bread, something else over there besides the bread, and that's permitted according to halacha, according to Jewish law, it's permitted, that thing. So in a case like that, we say the bread is a minority and therefore it becomes nullified. In a case like that, we're allowed to have that product. Right? The classic case that brings down the Shulchan Aruch over here is kotach habavli. What is that? This is a dish that they used to have in the time of the Talmud, that it was made out of breadcrumbs and then all kinds of other things involved there, ingredients. And it was like a dip that they used to put dip into some foods in there, some bread, whatever it is. So in a case like that, as we said, if the majority of that product is not bread, it's something else, even though there is bread inside there and it's made by non-Jews, it gets nullified in the majority, and therefore it's allowed to have this product. Very good. So now that we finished discussing the issue of the bread, Rabbi, we also have to discuss the issue of cooked dishes, because the issue of cooked dishes is a little bit more complicated, it's a little bit more weighty, it's a little bit more stringent. What does that mean? That when it comes to cooked dishes, which are not bread, other things, not bread, not cake, not things like this, we're talking about other foods. So there we have two conditions in the Shulchan Aruch brought down, that if these two conditions are met, so then it's forbidden to eat this product that was cooked by non-Jews. Number one, it has to be something which cannot be eaten raw. So what does that mean? If you have like a fruit which is readily eaten raw as well, like an apple for instance, so there, if a non-Jew went and cooked that apple, there is no prohibition. Why is that? Because you could have eaten that without the cooking. So therefore, it didn't really do much for you. And in that sense, you just made it a little bit more sweet, whatever it is. But the point is that you didn't really make it edible for you by cooking it. So therefore, in a case like that, we say that it's allowed to have that. Also, there's another thing, that it goes up onto the table of the kings. What does that mean? That this is a little bit tricky to understand what that means, that there are certain things that go up on the table of the kings. What does that mean? That the kings eat these things? It's considered to be something like chashuv, something important, something substantial. That's the condition that we're talking about. So if we have these two conditions, number one, it's not eaten raw. This product. Number one, it needs to be cooked to be eaten, and number two, also that it goes up to the table of the kings. It's considered to be something important, something prominent. So there we say, in case like that, that you're not allowed to have that food if it was cooked by non-Jews. So what has to be done in order to allow something like this, some kind of food like this, right? What would be an example of these kinds of foods? Meat, chicken, eggs, right? Fish, all kinds of things like this. These things now they do go up on the table of the kings. They do eat them, and also they're not eaten raw in general, right? Unless you're talking about sushi, as we're going to discuss maybe later on, this issue of sushi. What happens with that? But before we get to the sushi, let's first talk about just the basic idea that we're talking about things which are eaten on the king's tables, and also things which are not eaten raw. So things that, as we said, these things are prohibited. So what does the person need to do in order to make this permitted? What the tikkun is there? What rectification can a person do in order to fix this problem? So very simple, right? He can, number one, first of all, he can place this food on the fire where it's going to be cooked, or place it into the oven where it's going to be baked, this thing. So once he places it in there, he could just leave it there and it's going to get cooked by itself. So therefore now, even if the goy comes and does something there to make it hotter, or turns up the flame, or whatever it is, or flips it over to the other side, if it could have cooked the way it was like that, the way that the Jew placed it there, it would have been cooked already by itself. It didn't need really to be helped along more with the goy. It could have cooked it to a certain level. So there we say that the food is permitted because of that. Whether the goy places it on the fire, or later on he comes also, there's another solution. Let's say the goy placed it on the fire already. So now, what do I do, right, to make it good? What I do is I can do something else to flip it over, or all kinds of things like this. What does that mean? That if I by doing this now, by increasing, making it, stirring it, or turning up the flame, I'm now cooking it even more by doing that. So therefore, I'm also participating in the cooking as well as a Jew, even though the goy placed it on the fire. So nevertheless, this tikkun that I'm doing now, this rectification that I'm doing to this food, is going to make it permitted. So in a case like that, a person has an option to fix it up like this, even though it was placed by the goy, he still has an option to come and fix up this problem. So it goes on to say the Shulchan Aruch, ערב דבר הנאכל בכל שהוא חי, אם דבר שאינו נאכל הוא חי, בכל שהוא חי, ישנם בעבוד כוכבים, אם העיקר מדבר שיש בו משום בשולי עבוד כוכבים, אסור, ואם לאו מותר. So there's also another issue, as we discussed with the bread, also something similar. Sometimes you have a mixture of two things. Right? The food is a mixture of things which are forbidden to be cooked by non-Jews and things which are permitted. Because let's say, for instance, it's eaten raw, this thing, or it does not go up to the table of the kings. So in a case like that, we go here also according to the importance, the majority, whatever the majority is, or the ikar, the main essence of this food, the main ingredient over there for this food, we go according to the main ingredient, the majority. So in a case like that, if the majority is permitted, even though the minority over there is not permitted because it's food which is not allowed to be cooked by Jews or non-Jews, nevertheless, we go according to the majority. The minority gets nullified there. So therefore, in a case like that, we say that it's allowed to have that food or that dish, whatever it is. Very good. But nevertheless, mentions the Shulchan Aruch here something very important. That if you have something like some kind of a bread, but that bread also has a layer of something which is forbidden there, some things like meat or things like this, or other ingredients that go inside, some kind of like borekas, all kinds of things like this, a dough, you have dough and you have something inside, a filling there. So in cases like this, when you have filling and dough, here, since that filling is forbidden because it's not allowed to be cooked by non-Jews, so therefore in a case like this, we say that the whole thing, that whole boreka, whatever it is, a calzone, whatever it's called, all kinds of things which are made like this, there's all kinds of dishes in different communities, all these kinds of things are forbidden. Why is that? Because even though the bread itself would be okay, we could live with the bread, as we said, there's ways to get around that problem with the bread. When it comes to the meat, when it comes to the filling there, there's a problem. So therefore we say in a case like that it's forbidden to have this if it was totally made by non-Jews. Very good. Let's go on about that. Another interesting point is like this. Sometimes what happens is that the non-Jew cooks something, a dish, certain dish, whatever, but he was not intending to cook anything. He had a different intention. Let's say, he started up the oven for a different reason. Let's say he started up the oven because he wanted the heat of the oven. He just wanted to put some heat in the room, whatever, or some kind of other reason why he wanted to start the oven. His intention was not to cook. He didn't know that there was something in there being cooked. He just thought that I'm going to like the oven for different reasons. Whatever it is, let's say, to clean the oven also. Let's say his intention was to clean the oven by heating it up like this, going to full blast. It happens to be there's some food in there, right? So since his intention was not to cook the food or bake the food, so therefore it's allowed to have that dish. So the Shulchan Aruch tells us. So this can be helpful sometimes to permit certain things, because what happens is that many times the non-Jew will light the oven or light the fire or these kinds of things, and there happens to be food over there that he doesn't even know. He doesn't realize that he's cooking food. He thinks he's doing some kind of other action. He's doing cleaning or he's doing some kind of maintenance or whatever it is. So things like this, in a case like that, it would be definitely allowed. Also, another important thing, which is brought down the Ramah over here, it's brought down from the Rambam, that there are certain kinds of foods which are need to be roasted in the oven, like all kinds of nuts and all kinds of snacks. These kinds of snack foods, nuts and all kinds of legumes that are also toasted in the oven, roasted in the oven. So the Ramah says over here, in the name of the Rambam, that these things are allowed to have, even though they're roasted by non-Jews. So we have like all kinds of nut products like this in the market, peanuts and chestnuts and walnuts and all kinds of things which are roasted. pistachios, right? All kinds of things. There's walnut. So these kinds of things. What happens is that even though they are roasted by non-Jews, tells you the Ramah here that nevertheless it's mutar. It's allowed to eat them. And that's what the custom is, right? That we buy all kinds of things like this, roasted nuts, and we're not particular that it was roasted by non-Jews. They're never roasted by Jews, these things. They're roasted in the factory by non-Jews. So how is it that we eat these things? Because, says the Rambam, the reason is because we don't invite somebody over to eat just these kinds of nuts, these kinds of snack foods, right? Nobody invites you for that. It's not considered to be something so important, something so significant. So therefore it's considered to be something which doesn't go on the table of the kings. It may go on the table of the kings as a dessert or some kind of it's a snack. That we're not talking about that. We're talking about that the king will not, in the Rambam, according to Rambam, the point is that the king will not invite you just to eat this stuff, right? It's just not significant. So therefore things like this, the rule is with them, that custom also is like that nowadays. And it's always been like that. That we're not particular about these kinds of things. So therefore, if you have foods which are like roasted nuts and roasted, let's say, all kinds of legumes like this, right, peas and hummus, right, chickpeas, all kinds of things like this, even though they are roasted by non-Jews, nevertheless, since a person doesn't invite over his friend to eat these kinds of things, so therefore it's considered to be allowed to eat them, and there's no problem with that. Very good. Let's go on a little bit. There's also a very important issue which I want to discuss, which is something which is a modern application, has great significance for us in this modern world, which is regarding the restaurants that we go to. So what happens is over there is that in most of these restaurants, the Jews are not really cooking the food. The non-Jews are cooking food, and the Jews basically are just coming in the morning and lighting a fire, lighting a flame, lighting the oven or whatever it is, and then the rest of the day the non-Jews go on cooking, right, for the whole day and night on that flame that was lit in the morning by a Jew. So the question is, are we allowed to have these kinds of things? So the truth is, we find a big machloket over here in the Shulchan Aruch regarding this. According to Maran Shulchan Aruch, according to Rabbi Yosef Karo, the author of Shulchan Aruch, this kind of tikkun, this kind of solution is not really allowed to do. What does that mean? When it comes to bread, we already mentioned that we're allowed to do that. If the Jew lit the fire or extended the fire, made it larger, turned up the fire, all kinds of things like this, then it's allowed to have the bread, even though it's basically made by non-Jews. The Jew did something to make it faster or make it better, whatever it is. In a case like that, so there it's allowed for us to have that. But when it comes to cooked dishes, it's a little bit more stringent. And it says in Shulchan Aruch that we're more stringent regarding the cooked dishes than we are regarding the bread. So therefore, in the case of cooked dishes, we do not allow just a Jew to come in the morning and to come and light the fire, because what happens is that basically the goyim are cooking all day, and it's not really, the food is not being really cooked by the Jews. So therefore, in the case of cooked dishes, which is more stringent, we are stringent regarding that according to Maran Shulchan Aruch, and therefore a person is not allowed to have a situation like that. So the question is, then how do we find that in most restaurants in the world that the situation is just like that? So the truth is that there's also another opinion. The Ramah brings down that the Ashkenazim have a custom to be lenient regarding that. What does that mean? That they will eat cooked dishes which were made by non-Jews as long as somebody came, a Jewish guy, and lit the fire in the morning, lit the oven in the morning, lit the flames in the morning, whatever it is, the stove. So these things do allow, according to the opinion of the Ramah. So the truth is that the simple meaning of the simple learning of the sugya, of the topic matter, really goes like Shulchan Aruch, according to most Rishonim, that really a person should be stringent regarding this. But nevertheless, the Ashkenazim were lenient regarding this. That's their custom. Maybe because they had difficulties, right? They're doing it the other way. Just a practical matter. Maybe it was just very difficult to find a situation like that where they lived in Europe over there. Maybe it was very difficult to achieve this situation. So therefore, they wanted to be lenient, like the minority opinion. Nevertheless, what happens is here. Now, what happens is that now we go to these restaurants, and there are also many Sephardim that are eating in these restaurants. So the question is, do they have what to rely on? Because according to Maran Shulchan Aruch, they should not be having these foods, because there's really no cooking by the Jews at all. Just some Jew came and lit the flame in the morning. So the question is, what does now a Sephardi guy do when he goes to restaurants like this, which are lenient according to the opinion of the Ashkenazim, that allows you just to light the fire in the morning? So we already discussed this with Moreno, Rabbeinu, Rabbi al-Bashalom, the great authority of this generation, our great teacher. He talked to us about this at length, and he told us that, when it comes to a situation where there's no choice, lechatchila, preferably restaurants, he told us, should have a situation where they're going to both of these opinions. What does that mean? That they're machmir, that they're stringent, because there is also Sephardim that come to these places and eat there. So therefore it has to be kosher according to everybody, not only according to the Ashkenazim. So in Eretz Israel, which is about 50-50 over there, right? 50% Sephardim, 50% Ashkenazim. So there it has to be for everybody. So therefore, but when it comes to Chutz La'aretz, when it comes to diaspora, there are many places where there's not many Sephardim over there. It's mostly Ashkenazim, 90%, 80%, whatever it is. So the Sephardim are a small minority. So then in a case like that, you may be hard pressed to find a place that suits your custom. If you're a Sephardi guy, you go to a place like that, which is everybody's Ashkenazi over there almost. Right? Very, very small percentage of Sephardim over there. So you may be hard pressed to find a restaurant which goes according to the Sephardi opinion, according to the Sephardi Shita. So then what does a person do? So Maran told us, that in a case like that, a person can be lenient. What does that mean? He has no other restaurant to go to, something feasible, something realistic, not 2,000 miles away. Right? That's not realistic, right? That also has to be something, a restaurant which is decent, right? Not some junky place. Who wants to go to a place like that, right? Nobody wants to eat there. It has to be something feasible and realistic. If a person can find something like that, so then he should opt to go to a place where they go according to the Sephardi custom. But if there is no place like that where he is located right now, so therefore he can rely on the Ashkenazi custom as well. And what's the reason here that we allow a person to rely on the Ashkenazi custom? The reason is because we have a double doubt. What's a double doubt? One doubt is that maybe the halacha is like the Ramah, as we said, right? That the Ramah brings down the minority opinion that it's allowed just to have a Jew coming in the morning and lighting the fire flame. That's one safek. That's one doubt. The other doubt is that maybe there's also another opinion brought down the Rishonim in the Ravad. He says that when it comes to this issue of food cooked by non-Jews, it doesn't apply in cases where in public areas. It only applies at home areas, right? Not in businesses, not in factories. So therefore, we go to a restaurant which is a public area. So there, according to the Ravad, this prohibition doesn't apply over there. What's the reason why he says it doesn't apply in places like that? Because in places like that, there's no chashash, there's no concern of chatanut, of intermarriage. Why? Because you're not over there to be together with that non-Jew, in a social setting. It's a business. You're going there just to pay the guy to do you a service, and you're getting out of there. So there's no issue of intermarriage in cases like that. So therefore, says the Rabbi, even though the halacha is not like this, but since we have a double doubt regarding a case like this, so a person who has no choice, he can't go to a restaurant where they do according to the Sephardi Shita, which is that the Jew has to do some part of the cooking of the food as well. So in a case like that, he can rely on the Ashkenazi opinion, and therefore he can go to a restaurant like that over time. So this is important to know in order to solve some problems, some dilemmas that people have, because sometimes there's no choice. A person has to know to be practical a little bit regarding these things. Also, another issue is that sometimes what happens is that a person has a restaurant or some kind of business, and they open up this restaurant, let's say after Shabbat goes out, Moti Shabbat. What happens is that now the non-Jews who are working there, they already came there, and before the Jews got there, the mashgiach, whatever the supervisor or the owner, they already made up some batch of rice, and they made a batch of some French fries, things like this, potatoes, right, baked potatoes. So the question is now, does that have to be thrown out because it wasn't made at all by Jews, and the non-Jews did totally the cooking from A to Z, right? Everything was done by non-Jews. Not even a Jew got a chance to light the fire over there. So the non-Jew came and lit the fire, and he did everything by himself. So now the question is, if we have things like French fries or simple foods like this, French fries or rice, white rice, regular rice, does that have to be thrown away? So the truth is that we did find a solution for this. Why is that? Because we already mentioned, according to Rambam, the things which are forbidden because of the cooking of non-Jews, it only applies to things which are a person invites others, your fellow man, for the foods like this, if you will not invite a person something like that, it's not considered to be forbidden according to the Rambam. So what happens is that people don't invite nowadays, people don't invite their friends just to have some French fries and to have some white rice. What's the reason why? It's considered to be like a cheapskate, it's not really considered to be something substantial. You invited me for that? I would rather stay at home and eat my food. What do I need you for, right? He's going to tell them, what kind of things is that? It's not considered to be respectable to invite a person just for that. So therefore, the truth is, according to Rambam, even though in the older generations things were a little bit different, but nowadays nobody invites you just for that, for French fries or for white rice. So therefore, according to Rambam, it's considered to be something which doesn't go to the table of the kings. What does that mean? Even though the kings do eat rice and French fries, they do. As a side dish, they eat it, but a person doesn't invite you just to eat those foods. So therefore, according to Rambam, it's allowed. Also, there's another reason why it's allowed, because the Shulchan Aruch says that those cooked dishes which are not allowed, we're talking about two different things. We're talking about, one is something which comes to accompany the bread as a relish, something you eat together with the bread as a relish. That's number one, and also a parperet, right? It calls it parperet. So it's either a relish for the bread or parperet. So explain now what a parperet means. Parperet, according to some definitions, it's talking about a relish, basically. That's one definition. But according to the other definition, it's talking about certain types of bread products which are not used for meals, but as snacks. Like something which is wafers or all kinds of bread products like this, which are the bracha for them is mezonot, because they're not eaten for meals, snack foods. So these things that's what we're talking about, parperet. So therefore, it doesn't really seem to fit the definition of either of these opinions regarding rice and regarding French fries. It doesn't fit into any of these opinions. Why is that? Because a person doesn't really take bread and accompany it just with plain rice, because it's really the same thing, right? Rice and bread are the same nutrition. They're basically the same product. They both fill you up, so they're not really something which the rice doesn't come to accompany the bread. It comes to accompany the main dish, the meat dishes. And that's what it really comes for. And also, French fries, the same thing. The French fries also fill you up, and they're not really coming to accompany the bread. Nobody eats bread with French fries. Right? That's not really the way bread is eaten. It's eaten with other things like fish, eggs, right? All kinds of things like this, chicken, things like this, and meat, and things like this. This comes to accompany the bread. All kinds of salads also, all kinds of salad dishes, all kinds of things like this. But when it comes to rice, white rice, and French fries, since these things are not really considered to be something that you invite somebody over for, according to Rambam, and according to the other opinion, that's not really called a parperet. It's not really called something which goes as a relish with the bread. So therefore, if a person encounters a situation like that, where the food was made, the white rice was made, or the French fries were made by a non-Jew, so he could be lenient because of this, because it doesn't really fit the definition of all the things that we just mentioned because of all these reasons. So therefore, in a case where it's difficult to throw out that food, it's going to cause a big loss, and that's also going to be practically very difficult to do that. So therefore, a person can be lenient regarding that. So we'll stop it here. Hashem should give you blessing and elevation, and we should see good things. It's Rosh Chodesh today, and also tomorrow morning we're going to have Rosh Chodesh as well. So Kadosh Baruch Hu should give you a blessing. It's a month of victory for the Jewish people, a month of Hanukkah, a month of salvation, a month of miracles. Kadosh Baruch Hu should give us only good tidings and blessings and wealth and happiness and all the good things and elevation, spiritual and physical. Amen ve'amen. Chazak u'baruch, Laila Tov. Chodesh Tov.